Charles, you have said you met the claimant to the Portuguese throne and the former king of Sudan, or Rwanda. I apologize for forgetting.
Rwanda.
How many former monarchs, claimants, or current monarchs have you met, and what are they like?
Well, I met the King of Sweden. I met the King of Portugal. I met the King of Italy. I have met uh, the rightful Emperor of Austria. I met the King of Rwanda. The only one of them I really have gotten to know was the King of Rwanda. The others I met socially, all very nice. The rightful Emperor of Austria was good enough to give me a foreword for my book, and I've met him a couple of times. I knew his father. What are they like? Well, the King of Rwanda was the one I knew best, and I can say he was kingly, very devout Catholic, but you knew you were in the presence of something different, something unusual. One of the things that a very impressive moment, which I'll never ever forget. He came down to LA in '94, and we had a large number of security personnel that were detailed to him. It was donated by the security company, as some sort of gesture. So there were, I guess, maybe 10 or 11 of these folks, 12 maybe. And these are pretty rough, tough guys. They weren't, a lot of them ex-cops, ex-military, and so forth. Well, they were with the king for almost 2 weeks. And me, I was the ADC, we say. And that was an interesting time. Went all over LA, took him to various things. But the last night, when he said farewell to them, it was the weirdest scene. It was in a house in Arcadia that I had gotten put at our disposal. And the king sat in a chair. And it just happened. One by one, every one of these guys went up to him and knelt in front of him. And he blessed them. It was amazing. And these were not dyed-in-the-wool monarchists by any
Catholic?
stretch.
Were they
a lot of
Catholic?
them weren't even Catholic. Some of them were Catholic, but a lot of them weren't. They went up, dropped to their knees, and he made the sign of the cross on each of their foreheads. And, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, as they say. And then they all took their leave. And I'll never forget what he said after they left. He said, "That is really the problem for you Americans. You are orphans." I've never forgotten that. Because
that's getting to me just listening to that story, to be honest.
Well, it is a very different thing from what we are used to. I mean, you think of Emperor Karl, who all during his death bed was saying, "I am suffering that my peoples might come back together." There is to monarchy, beyond the rational arguments, which I'm certainly capable of making, and the historical arguments, all that. There is something else, something deep in the human psyche that it touches. I remember a poem from 1715 about the Scottish lords, the Earl of Huntly, went over to the Hanoverian king and betrayed King James, the Stuart. But the refrain of the poem goes, "O my king, God save my king, whatever me befall, I would not be in Huntly's place for honors, lands, and all. And when you think of the tons of people who went into exile for their king from the United States, from France, the emigres, um, the Jacobites who went all over the world for the Stuarts, the White Russians who left Russia after the Romanovs, and on and on and on and on and on. There is nothing quite like it in the annals of Republican governance. Nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all great or wonderful people or all heroic, not by a long shot, but more of them are than we tend to produce. There are a ton of royal saints. I can't think of a single president who would qualify for that in any country. Maybe Garcia Moreno, but he was a monarchist. So, you know, one of the the thing about monarchy is that it very much engages the emotions. You know, when I was working on Star Spangled Crown, the scene in front of the White House when the youngest prince is killed and his body is brought home, and our narrator's favorite cousin has just died. When I was writing that, there were tears in my eyes, even though none of it had happened. I made it up. But it's the kind of thing that happens under a monarchy. And there were a number of real-life scenes that were in my head when I was writing it. One of them being the return of the body of the Duke of Kent in World War II to his brother, King George, because he was killed in an air crash. And, you know, and the crowds were outside Buckingham Palace and so forth. And they sang to the king. It is a mystery. Monarchy is as much a mystery as the faith or as anything else. Like the faith, there's a ton of it that's quite rational and makes perfect sense. But then there's beyond. You know, there's the coronation, the anointing, this eighth sacrament, this strange mystery. But as to what they're like, unassuming usually, the very opposite of snobbish. Because remember, snobbery and that kind of thing comes from people who have something to prove. But a king doesn't have to prove anything. It simply is. I used to joke with the King of Rwanda that it was really a pity that because he was a very poor man, you know, when he was deposed, he had nothing. All of his assets were frozen, and the government took them. So I told him, I said, you know, if only you had been a president instead of a king. And he said to me, yes, I know, I teased the King of Rwanda. Well, something people have to just accept. I tease. Anyway, I said, if only you'd been a president, Your Majesty. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you'd been the president of Rwanda, you'd have had 3/4 of the country's gold reserve shipped off to a Swiss bank account, you know, within a month of your inauguration. And once you were deposed, you'd be on Easy Street. And I'd be there too. Instead, it was, oh, my people, my nation, they are my treasure. Yeah. We can't spend that, can we, Your Majesty?
Gosh. What was his response?
Oh, he laughed. He had a very good sense of humor. He was a very, very funny man, actually. Well, you know, and you have to be, because he'd seen everything go south on him.
Yeah.
You know, he spent years in exile around the borders of Rwanda. And then in 90 or 91, whenever it was, he got wind of the terrible genocide that was about to take place. So he managed to get to Washington in hopes of warning the United States government about it, but they would do something. That didn't happen.
What didn't happen? He wasn't able to warn, or they didn't do anything?
They didn't do anything. He was able to warn. Didn't do any good. Not a bit. Not one little tiny bit. And so the result, of course, was horror.